The Hard Rock Empire is on the air, and no, this is not an April Fool's joke, even though this is April the 1st. This is the reality. We are here on a Wednesday night special, Wednesday edition of the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We are going to be checking out the music of March the 6th this week. So, looking forward to that. And we're going to be catching up on some other releases from that week, in addition to the two albums that we're going to be talking about. And, of course, we'll be going into the vault as well to talk about two classic albums. One a little more classic. One's probably a little better than the other one. The other one's a little more classic than the other, if you will. So we'll get to that during the vault, which is the last segment of our program. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. Feels like it's been a while, but gave me some time to really get into the music for this week, which is good because there was a lot of good stuff, a lot of interesting stuff, and some really kind of cool re-releases, box sets, and just some interesting music out there. Pretty excited to talk about it.
There's one of the streamers I watch that do a lot of stuff with TTS sounds and things like that, and they have it coded that when somebody types "it's been a while" in the chat, it sings "it's been a while,"
as it should.
And they also have "it's been" from and this is
like Bare Naked Ladies,
yes.
or
and
nice.
then this is from this is and it just like they'll just, as soon as somebody mentions it, it just
God,
becomes
that would get so obnoxious.
it does after a while, among other things, but clever for sure. And we won't be adding those to the channel anytime soon, but definitely some interesting stuff this week. It has been a little bit since we've done this, and we'll be back again on Sunday night with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire when we dive into the music of March the 13th coming up this Sunday night. But March the 6th on the agenda for this week. Before we get to that music, a good reminder that join the Discord if you are not already a member of the Discord. And in just a moment, I will paste the link of the Discord into both of the chats on YouTube and on Twitch. And we'll be doing that, and I'll pin that at the top as well so you can check that out. But that's where you'll find out about any schedule changes. That's where you'll find out about any new stuff, or just be a part of the discussion there. So join the Discord and come be a part of our community, which is ever growing. We really appreciate having you along over there. But of course, we're going to get to the new music for this week, and that's a good time for me to paste the playlist that Mike puts together in YouTube into the chats. And of course, Mike goes through and basically curates all the new releases that are at least worth checking out into a playlist on YouTube. That playlist, of course, is the date of March the 6th in this question, or in this at this time. And then we'll go through there and we'll each pick one album to spotlight. But we have some other things that we want to spotlight as far as interesting names, as far as re-releases and anniversaries of albums. I know that's one of the things that's on your agenda to talk about to make us all feel old.
Definitely some cool re-releases for sure. As far as major releases go, I don't know if this even really qualifies as a major release, but it's one that definitely stood out to me. It's a self-titled album from the band Axe Dragger. Kind of not notable otherwise, but kind of looking into them, I found out that this band actually features as their frontman Terry Glaze, who may be familiar to some people. He was the pre-Phil Anselmo vocalist for Pantera, appeared on Metal Magic, Projects in the Jungle, and I Am the Night in the mid-'80s. I guess after Pantera got rid of him, he fronted Lord Tracy, a sleaze rock band, for a while. But, the song, it's the album title. There's the title track is Axe Dragger. It's fine for what it is.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to the whole thing yet, but it's just not a name I expected to see pop back up after all these years. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, what I've heard of that, the playlist track I thought was pretty solid. And, there were a couple of like new wave of either British heavy metal or traditional heavy metal bands on the list this week. And the tracks I've heard from them were pretty much what you would expect from those bands. I feel like we are getting a pretty healthy dose of that type of music every week, which means good and bad. One, it's a really solid music genre, so always great to hear. But the downside, I think, is because you hear it every week, like it really kind of has to stand out above and beyond to
Yeah.
kind of make the cut for our picks each week.
What it ends up being is just a safe pick. Like if nothing
Yeah.
else really stands out, like I can always go with this. And there were several albums that I did enjoy this week. One of them, a New York-based death and thrash band, Legionary, released their album "Never Ending Quest for Purpose." The band More released the album Destructor. They're actually a legit new wave of British heavy metal band. They date back to 1979. Kind of wild. Like this version of the band kind of reformed or formed in 2011 as like a tribute band, even though they had a member from the original act. In 2022, they decided to go ahead and just use the original band's name. It's kind of weird, like the whole lineage of the band reformed into one thing. But that was certainly good. A Danish hard rock band, Shred, released the album What They Say. That's worth checking out. Then we have a Greek epic metal or traditional metal band, Triumpher,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure about the name, but their album Piercing the Heart of the World, that's worth a listen as well.
One other one that I had marked that I thought was pretty catchy, what I heard of it so far, was a band from Sweden, a hard rock band called Battering Ram,
Yeah.
with their self-titled album, Battering Ram. That was pretty catchy as well, but you kind of covered, I think, all the other ones that I had marked. I don't know if I can't remember if you did miss it. I or mentioned it. I just kind of missed it. But there was an instrumental progressive rock
Oh yeah, I didn't
album,
mention that, but
Pimlico, that was on there. That was really interesting. We talk about it a lot, about instrumental albums. They just have to be amazingly outstanding. Typically in a week that's maybe subpar for me to want to really go for an instrumental album. But as far as instrumental albums go, what I've heard of that one so far is really, really good.
yeah, definitely a talented group of individuals there. There was one other one, kind of they were listed as progressive metal, but they were kind of more than that. They were just a little out there. It's a Russian band, Tardigrad Inferno. They had the album Hush, female vocals, just different. Like if you're looking for something kind of off the beaten path, check them out for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely, like I said, we didn't have a lot this week, but I thought the stuff that was good was pretty solid all the way across the board.
Yeah, I would agree. There were a couple re-releases and anniversary sets that are worth noting. It's kind of funny because I feel like no matter how old you are, one of these two is going to make you feel older. um, for those of us who maybe are in and around the mid 40 range, Godsmack re-released their album Awake, their third studio album, kind of their second hit album though. It is the 25th anniversary of that album. You have a couple different options if you want to pick that up. There's the $60 2LP smoky green vinyl, holographic lithograph version, as well as a $19 CD plus lithograph. Both include 5 bonus tracks. And I don't know how you feel about a cappella music, but if you're into that sort of thing, there are the a cappella versions of Awake and Bad Magic on both of those releases. So I'm not an a cappella guy, but if that's your thing, those are out there. And you know, $20 for a CD anniversary edition, that's not terrible, really.
I'm looking at the reviews of Awake, and you've got All Music that's 3 out of 5, and as we've talked about, All Music kind of hates everything. So, Entertainment Weekly gave it a C minus. Rolling Stone gave it 2 out of 5. Q gave it 4 out of 5, and then there's this Robert Christgau. It appears to be just like an image of a bomb that you would see in a
seen
cartoon.
that on some albums before.
With a fuse lit. So I don't even know what that means, and I don't care enough to look it up until it's on one of the albums I actually cover, but he gives it a cartoon bomb as the review, whatever that means. So, yeah, a classic album. It is depressing that has been 25 years since that came out.
Yeah, and if you're a little older than that, this one really didn't affect me because it predates me. There is the 9 CD box set commemorating the first 2 Rainbow albums. The original Rainbow album is celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Wow.
We got Rainbow, the Temple of the King, 1975 to 1976 box set. Features newly mastered albums, rare recordings, alternative versions, and more. 24-page book with extensive liner notes, rare photographs, memorabilia. So essentially, it's remastered versions of the first 2 albums, as well as 7 discs that include live recordings from shows in Germany that have never been released outside of Japan, which isn't super surprising, and 4 previously unreleased takes from tour rehearsals. So that one's a little more costly. You can get it for about $75 on Amazon, but Rainbow's classic. I mean, Man on the Silver Mountain, just tremendous song. Probably worth getting if you're a fan.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe the more alarming part about that one, if you're our age, is those 50-year anniversaries are getting a lot closer.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's not going to be long until those are,
At least in my life. Maybe
Yeah.
not in my
wheelhouse of
Yeah.
music, but yeah, for sure. So, yeah, Rainbow's great.
Yeah, Richie Blackmore, Ronnie James Dio.
You can't go wrong there.
No, not at all.
So, yeah, really good stuff. Any interesting names this week?
There really weren't any.
That's
I
a
was kind
bummer.
of disappointed.
We had some good ones last week, but no real interesting ones this week.
I was thinking about the Rainbow thing, kind of going back to Man on the Silver Mountain.
Yeah.
I feel like people always talk about, as far as Blackmore goes and like Deep Purple, Smoke on the Water being that kind of iconic riff. I like Man on the Silver Mountain. There's something
Yeah.
about that riff to me that I think is just cooler. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a weird take, but that's how I feel.
It's very classic for sure.
Yeah.
I think it definitely. There were so many riffs of that era of those big bands that just kind of almost superseded the song. Like they just kind of had almost a life of their own. I think that qualifies as one of the best riffs of classic rock. Maybe one of the more underrated ones, I think, overall, because so many other ones like Smoke on the Mountain have just mega songs that crossed over from rock into the mainstream. Man on the Silver Mountain maybe didn't have that same mainstream appeal for whatever reason.
That's unfortunate, but
It is.
it is what it is.
But having said all that, there's quite a variety of stuff there for you to go through. But, of course, each week we can only pick one album to spotlight. So it is time to get to the new music as of March the 6th. Really good stuff on there. But we had to narrow it down to two. Mike, what do you have for your pick for this week?
So yeah, going through the playlist this week, there was kind of the one that was the obvious choice for anybody, and I decided I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to find something different, maybe a little new. And after going through numerous albums that I thought were solid, this is the one that kind of stood out the most to me. It's from a Norwegian progressive metal band. They formed back in 2021. The band is Terravia, if that is how that is pronounced, and the album is A New World.
I will admit, I admitted this off air, and I'll admit it on air. When I thought we were going to try to squeeze this podcast in on Sunday due to my schedule, I opened this album and saw that it was 5 tracks and an hour long, and I thought, I don't have time to listen to this today. Today, I went back and listened to it, and wow, this is really some kind of album. Like it's a lot. I don't want to steal your thunder, but it is really, really good.
Yeah, it's funny. As I started pulling the playlist for next week, one thing that jumped out to me was live Dream Theater, like kind of like almost like an official bootleg kind of album. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's not like if typically live Dream Theater, it's gonna be like a headlining show. It's gonna be 8 discs and 7 hours. This is basically just them on like a festival stop. So they weren't the headliner, but like the live album is like 5 or 6 tracks long. Like that's
their whole set.
When you see them and they're not the headliner, that's all the more they could fit in. Like these are long songs and sounded great, but this album kind of made me think of that because it's formatted in a very similar way. You have a 5-track album. The average length of song is like 11 and a half minutes. So you're in for a ride. It's not a quick listen. It's an odyssey, more or less. The band consists of Anders Danielson on electric and acoustic guitars and backing vocals, Øystein Helland on electric guitars and backing vocals, Petter Falk on vocals, acoustic guitar, and additional keyboards, Anders Christensen on drums, percussion, marimba, and backing vocals, Kevin Melly on bass and backing vocals, and Øystein Meyer on keyboards and vocals. I mentioned it feels formatted like it's a Dream Theater album, which isn't a bad thing because I kind of liken these guys to being similar in a way, only with the exception that every so often they decide to throw in some harsh vocals, which is kind of wild when you consider you got 5 tracks. If you don't just start the album from the beginning, you don't know where you're going to land and what your first impression of the band's going to be. For the playlist, I picked what ended up being the shortest song on the album, Strive to Endure, which is like mostly an acoustic ballad. So it did not have me prepared for the beginning of the album. The first track, War, which is a much longer, much heavier, progressive melodic death metal, essentially. Like, there's just a lot of harsh vocals there, but it's also the track that had the most of them. So you kind of settle back in. The origin is definitely more melodic. The title track, a lot of soft spots there, but it kind of shows the versatility of the band. They're kind of all over the place, but I enjoyed that. Like I didn't get bored at any point in time. I listened to this album both while I worked and while I drove to tennis matches, and it definitely kept you engaged. Um, you know, in a week where there was a lot of safe bets, this is the one that just really stood out to me the most. Given the way the album is set with your 5 tracks and I can't really pick standouts. You kind of have to absorb the whole thing. But as far as what to listen to for the podcast, I picked the second track, The Origin, to check out.
Let's check it out. This is Terravia with their new album, A New World. This is the second track off of this 5-song, 58-minute odyssey called The Origin. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, obviously they're very progressive.
Yeah.
You definitely get that vibe. You mentioned Dream Theater. It's really hard to pin them as any other one thing because you have the Dream Theater-esque stuff, but you've got the harsh vocals, and the first track has lots of harsh vocals,
Yeah.
and it definitely a departure from the other tracks. But overall, it's just the musicianship is great. If you're a fan of these kind of progressive, I mean, I said Odyssey, it is kind of that way. I think you'll really dig this, but it's definitely something you got to be ready for because it's not something you're going to sit down and absorb in 25 minutes. Like you really have to go through the whole thing. But overall, I think it's really strong.
Yeah, and it's always interesting when you're talking about a debut album from a band because you kind of see multiple angles that they're coming from, and you just wonder as they get into the second and third albums, like what sound do they kind of veer toward more, or do they keep that range? It'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely worth checking those guys out, though. Terravia, that is their new album out this week. It is definitely worth a listen. As for my pick, Mike mentioned there was one really easy pick. I went for the easy pick this week, and I'm not disappointed at all because this is a band that we have mentioned on several occasions on this podcast, but they've got a new album out, and it is definitely worth your time. This is the new album from the Raleigh, North Carolina heavy metal band Mega Colossus with Watch Out. We have spotlighted these guys a couple of times. In fact, it may have been the very first episode of our podcast.
I was just checking that because I feel like it probably was.
Because I believe their last album was released in 2024 in January. I think we spotlighted it in February of 2024. That was Showdown. And you kind of figured out even from that first album that these guys had something special. We spotlighted them again in late 2024 when it was a hurricane or something came through the Raleigh area, and they did a charity fundraiser to try to help the community. So not only are these guys super talented and they make awesome music, but they're also community-minded, and that always earns points in my book. But to the music side of it, just recently celebrating their 20th anniversary. They were formed in 2005. This is their 5th full-length album. Again, the 2024 release Showdown was the last album that they had released, a full-length album. The band is Sean Buchanan on vocals, Chris Millard on guitars, Bill Fisher on guitars, Anthony McHale, I believe, on bass, and Doza Mendoza on drums. Again, as we talked about the last time we spotlighted these guys, they release catchy, fun metal songs. And to me, when you release that kind of music, that's going to go a long way. I think it's going to bring in a lot of fans. Whatever you like in your metal, I think it's here. The guitars are driving and fast at times. You've got great bass lines. The drums keep up with the guitars. Vocals are outstanding. It really is a little bit of everything. But on top of it all, like they wrote catchy, fun songs. That always goes a long way, including the song we're going to listen to on the podcast about pro wrestling. How can you not pick a song about pro wrestling? I mean, it's kind of one of the things we talk about occasionally on this podcast. Obviously, some WWE references, some AAA references with Psycho Clown and the Lizard Man.
Which is basically WWE
Which
references.
is basically WWE references now. They just completed a Kickstarter that allowed them to tour this album in Europe, which is awesome. These guys need to be everywhere. Hopefully they keep getting bigger and bigger. I will always enjoy their stuff, and I can't wait. I would love to get a chance to see these guys on tour at some point. Angry Metal Guy agreed. That's not always their reviews aren't always glowing and positive, but this one was. To quote from that, it said, "I hope that Watch Out will be the record to ignite the explosion in popularity that Mega Colossus deserves. These lovable ruffians have once again brought a smile to my face and joy to my heart." Can't say it much better than that. Standout tracks, the whole thing is great, but if you had to pick four, Battlefront, Good Hunting, The Halls of Mysticos, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast, Tag In Your Friend. Let's check these guys out. Mega Colossus, one of our favorite bands from the podcast. Their new album, Watch Out. This is the third track off of this album, Tag In Your Friend. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Pirate princess or bestial empress, psycho clown or lizard man, just make the tag or meet your end. We against you, two against two, everyone in the ring. While double team, the rules extreme, let the crowd scream. This is awesome.
I just, you can't listen to that without having a smile on your face. And again, it's still awesome metal, but it's like, that's just fun. And totally caught me off guard the first time I heard it. I've gone back and listened to it a couple times since then, but these guys knocked it out of the park again. I'm super happy for them, and hopefully their European tour goes well. But Mike, your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I remember discovering Showdown a couple years ago and just being blown away by it. And I remember on their Bandcamp the tag adventure metal to describe their sound. And at the time, I was like, what does that even mean? But the more you listen to their music, you're like, that fits.
Yeah.
I don't, there's just something about it. It's hard to say, but you can't listen to it and not kind of have a smile on your face. So, like, is this as good as Showdown? I don't know, but man, it's solid.
Yeah.
Like they're still hitting it out of the park. I'm here for it.
Yeah, for sure. Excited to see these guys continue to grow and get more popular.
And yeah, that was the first episode. Because remember the original episode of the music podcast, we were talking about doing it monthly. So
Yeah.
we were covering January 2024. So I had 3 picks in that episode, which is kind of wild to think too. ML Bulls, Mega Colossus, and Striker, which is a great album too.
Yeah, that was.
But yeah, those were the early days.
That's when we didn't know this music was out there. Now we bring it to you mostly every week here on the podcast. If you are watching on Twitch and you're not subscribed, we're going to take a quick 90-second break. Twitch requires us to run ads, so we have to get those out of the way every so often. If you are subscribed or you want to use your Prime, you won't get the ads. If you're on YouTube, you won't get the ads, but please hang through them. They help us. We haven't really raised a whole lot of money through ads, to be honest, but eventually, maybe someday, it'll be enough to pay them out. But we just appreciate people being here and listening. If you can hang through those, you won't miss anything. We'll get to the vault on the other side of the break, so please hang tight, and we'll be back in about 90 seconds to talk about the vault. And as the ads get fired up, and they are rolling now. Yeah, it's fun to see these guys continuing to grow. They did the Kickstarter for the European tour, and I saw they're already over there, so kind of rolling along. We talked about it last time we talked about these guys. Raleigh, North Carolina has proven to be an area that's been awesome to kind of discover. I don't know if we'll get back down to the anime convention down there this year, but it is one that is always going to be kind of at the front of the list when it comes to conventions. The area itself is just really nice, and it's a growing area. But if people haven't been to Raleigh for whatever reason you want to go, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, not an overwhelming city by any means. Just kind of, it feels kind of homey, I guess. I don't know, but
yeah,
definitely worth a visit
for sure. That whole area is really, really nice. But hopefully we'll get a chance to get back down there again at some point. But looking forward to the music of March 13th. We'll have that coming up for you Sunday night. Hopefully at least a little more in the way of solid music for the week. This week was a little bit, as far as just volume of music wasn't as high as we've had so far, but should be some interesting stuff. So please join us on Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and we will have the music of March the 13th, plus a couple of new bands in the vault, which with the ads getting ready to wrap up in about 5 seconds, we are going to get to the vault. We will explain where we are headed in the vault, because Mike and I are running a couple different gimmicks, and the ads have ended. So welcome back if you are on Twitch. Appreciate you sticking around. We're headed to the vault, where Mike and I will each talk about a classic band or classic album you need to check out. Mike is running through 2 gimmicks right now. Last week and next week, we'll be continuing his run through the years. Started a couple weeks ago in 1969, basically going through and finding a classic album that was released that year to spotlight. This week, and of course 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks from now, he continues his preview, if you will, of Sonic Temple, which is coming up fairly soon now. You're almost to May, but he's been going stage by stage, day by day to spotlight bands, and he's had to skip some stages and days for obviously time reasons, and maybe just not exactly something he had a band that he specifically wanted to spotlight. So we're continuing on. This should be an interesting one this week, because you have picked a band and an album that is almost the polar opposite of the album that you talked about on the podcast tonight.
Yeah.
So what do we have as far as Sonic Temple preview this week?
Yeah, so we're moving on to Saturday, Stage 3. And if you look at the lineup overall on Saturday, to me, Stage 2 is kind of the main attraction for me. I'm not like a Bring Me the Horizon fan necessarily, so the main event of Saturday doesn't really do a whole lot for me. Stage 2, though, you're looking at Marilyn Manson, Bush, Alter Bridge, Coal Chamber, All That Remains. Like, to me, that's more up my alley. The headlining stage 1, you're looking at Bring Me the Horizon, Good Charlotte, Motionless in White, Black Veil Brides, The Plot and You, and a couple other bands that I'm not even familiar with, to be honest. But, Good Charlotte, maybe that'd be fine. But the rest of those bands, I just don't. It's not my thing. So if I'm not going to be at Stage 2, we have a third stage, which is predominantly pop punk bands, which not my wheelhouse, I'll admit. I think anyone kind of around my age is familiar with a lot of those bands, at least kind of in that wave that took place in the early 2000s. This band, though, kind of hit a little later than that, the one that I'm going to be talking about. They started in 2007. Their first album didn't come out till 2011. But in general, that stage features the band Knuckle Puck from Illinois, Citizen, who's from Ohio, State Champs from New York, The Wonder Years from Pennsylvania, Motion City Soundtrack from Minnesota, Mayday Parade from Florida, and the headliner, which I figured since I'm not super familiar with a lot of these bands, I might as well just jump straight to the headliner. And the band that I picked to feature today, The Story So Far. We are talking about their most recent album from 2024, and that album is I Want to Disappear.
It was interesting how a lot of those bands you mentioned were from like the upper Midwest area.
There was kind of that era of like Midwest emo music, and I think they kind of were like an offshoot of that. I'm not a scholar in this this genre of music, but I know there were a lot of bands that came out of the Midwest area that were kind of playing this music at that point in time.
That makes sense.
I mentioned before the show, and it's in my notes as well, like this stage feels like the stage that if you're kind of our age, but you have a much younger sibling, it's the stage they go to while you're watching Manson, Bush, and Coal Chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a pop punk scholar. Have I heard of some of these bands, and have I listened to some of that music in the past? Yeah, to me, I probably connect a little more with the bands before this, like your Blink-182s, because that was huge, late 90s, early 2000s. This band, formed in 2007, like I mentioned, named after a New Found Glory song. So, kind of that lineage of that style of music. Their first album didn't come out till 2011, which probably explains why I really haven't listened to them. That was kind of beyond my scope of listening to anything that would have been perceived as popular, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Going through their Wikipedia, I'm kind of relieved to see that since their beginning, they really haven't had a whole lot of band member turmoil. They in 2022, their bassist left, but there was no reason given. There was not that giant section of like, here are all the issues and drama that came out, and it just that wasn't the case. Going into their 2024 album, I Want to Disappear, it feels like something that could have come out in 2007. I don't really mean that in a negative way, but it just kind of feels authentic to that style of emo pop punk music that was being made at that point in time. It's 10 tracks long, it's 28 minutes, so pretty much the opposite of Terravia. And because of that, it's a really quick and easy listen. I think I listened to it like 5 times during work. Like it kept repeating it just to kind of get acquainted with it, and next thing I knew, it was over again. So, um, if you're of a certain age, I think this sound's going to be nostalgic to you, even if it's not the kind of music that you were most into at that point in time. I think that's just how it works. Standout tracks on the album include All This Time, Letterman. I assume it's about like being a Letterman in school and not David Letterman. I didn't really catch that though. Jump the Gun, Big Blind, Keep You Around. There's a certain, and I know it's in the genre title, pop punk, but kind of the pop sensibility of it, it's hard to not at least kind of like this stuff. Like, it's not offensive in any way, shape, or form. So, if you're curious what Stage 3 on Saturday is going to sound like at Sonic Temple, just give these guys a listen.
I think there's a cliche we've used many times on this podcast, and it probably applies to this style of music and maybe to these guys specifically, but it's the phrase, it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
Like, it's 28 minutes. It would have to be really bad for it not to be at least decent. And because it is pop, it probably isn't bad at all because it's just, that's what was popular at the time.
You're probably not going to dissect the lyrics like you would a Bad Religion album, but, it's catchy. It's fine.
Yeah, that sounds good. So if you're interested in that type of music, definitely check those guys out. The story so far, one of the headliners from Sonic Temple, which is coming up in May. In a couple weeks, we'll continue on with this journey through the headliners. But it's time to get to my vault pick. And last week I started one of 2 new gimmicks on the vault. We're taking one band and basically going through all their albums, and I'm ranking them in a tier list. And we started with Journey, which was definitely a journey. They were very much a progressive band. I definitely encourage you to go back and check that out from last week. But this week, we're starting a year-by-year thing as well. But I went to Wikipedia and I looked up one-hit wonders. And I decided I was going to find a one-hit wonder for each year starting in 1969 and find the album that it was on. I was going to listen to the whole album. I was going to review the album, and Mike suggested, which I thought was a good call, was there another track on the album that should have been the hit other than the one-hit wonder that hit? So this one was an interesting one. There were some songs in 1969 I was sort of familiar with, but I think this was probably one of the bigger one-hit wonders of 1969. We are going to check out the band Steam, which actually wasn't a real band, but that kind of happens sometimes. With a song that probably everybody knows thanks to its sports anthem-y nature, Na Na Hey Hey Kiss 'Em Goodbye, from 1969. Written by Paul Lecca, Gary DiCarlo, and Dale Frosher. A tribute to the then fictitious band Steam. It was number 1 on the pop singles charts of the Billboard Hot 100 in late 1969, remained on the charts in 1970, therefore attaining its one-hit wonder status. Because it hit kind of out of nowhere, Lecca put together a touring group to support the hit single, none of whose members actually played on the recording. The second single from the album, I've Gotta Make You Love Me, reached number 46 in the U.S. on the Billboard chart, number 44 in Canada, so it didn't really hit. It certainly didn't hit very well. Steam went on to create like several different live touring bands for 3 decades. So they actually went out and toured basically off the strength of this one song. Because the song did well, they did put an album together. It was released in 1970. And again, this isn't a real band, so you see the picture of the album art. Those are the guys involved. But the album hit number 84 on the U.S. chart, number 67 on the Canadian chart. It's hard to find. You can't find it on YouTube Music. Thankfully, somebody had uploaded the full album to YouTube, so I was able to listen to it. They worked the Na 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 into about 5 or 6 of the 10 songs on the album. Clearly, they thought that was going to make it stand out. It just really was more distracting than anything else. The songs all sounded like they would have been really popular in the late 1950s or early 1960s. They were very like almost bubblegum pop type songs. That was already kind of out of like fad in the late 60s. They were talking about 1970. Everybody had kind of moved on from that, so you can see why this album really didn't gain any traction because the music all felt really dated. I wouldn't necessarily say that "Na Na Hey Hey Kiss Him Goodbye" is the best song on the album, but it is definitely the catchiest. You can see why it was their only hit. Nothing on the album was offensive, but none of it was very memorable either. I think the single that it ended up being the hit was the one that probably should have been the hit. And obviously, it was wildly successful. By the beginning of the 21st century, the song had exceeded 6.5 million records sold, which is crazy. The reason it became popular in sports is because in 1977, Nancy Faust, the organist for the Chicago White Sox, began playing the song to taunt the visiting team. Now, remember, this was a White Sox. This is, if you're not real familiar with the late 70s White Sox, that was an era where they were trying a lot of experimental stuff to get fans in the door. Of course, probably the most famous thing, if you are not familiar, you could look it up on YouTube, is Disco Demolition Night, which ended up them basically blowing up disco albums. Ended up being such a scene and such a riot, basically, that they had to forfeit the game rather than play the game because of all the chaos of this. But so not surprising that this song, probably in that same era of trying things out, became a hit, and of course has basically lasted the test of time. This album, Brandon commented, like, see why they're one-hit wonders. It is a burn, but unfortunately it's true. This album has no re-listen value. I don't have any desire to go back and listen to it again. It's not bad by any stretch. I don't regret listening to it, but I wouldn't listen to it again. The hit itself is completely played out, so I don't even have any desire to necessarily hear that song anymore. Standout tracks, none. Like, there's really nothing. The hit. That's really it. And I don't mean to be mean about it, but there was a reason they were a one-hit wonder, and nobody wanted to hear any more from those guys. So, unfortunately, sadly, most of those guys have passed away since. There's one or two, I think, surviving members that have been involved with the band, but really none of them went on to do anything that was necessarily noteworthy other than just continue to kind of tour and do session work. So, yeah, maybe not the most positive review, but the realistic, it's kind of what I expected, because "Na Na Hey Hey Kiss Him Goodbye" is not exactly one of my favorite sports anthems of all time, but yeah, interesting to kind of find out what else that band had.
It kind of makes you think, and we could probably spend time delving into the topic, like, how many big sports anthems are kind of standalone bad songs?
Yeah, lots of them.
I don't think this one's by itself by any means.
No, not at all. I mean, unfortunately, probably the newest sports anthem that may be worse than this song, and I think it could be, is Seven Nation Army, because you hear that every high school band plays that song, and I don't ever
because it's simple.
It is,
and I get that's kind of what makes it anthemic, but my God,
yeah. So
I never really understood the White Stripes to begin with. Like, I don't.
No, not at all.
Not my thing.
So that's the thing. In 2 weeks, we'll get back to the one-hit wonder, and I think the way I'll tease this is I will give you the band that we are going to be checking out, and you can decide whether you know the one-hit wonder or not, and then obviously you can look it up because it's the internet. But we're going to be checking out an album by the band Mountain coming up in 1970. That'll be coming up in 2 weeks. Next week, I'll be getting into the second album of Journey. As I mentioned, the first 3 or 4 albums from those guys, definitely, if you like prog rock, you're going to love those albums. Definitely a different sound than stuff we hear in the mainstream, but fun stuff for sure. And yeah, this was definitely not my favorite vault pick of all time, but, necessary to kind of get through the gimmick. But with that said, it is time to wrap up this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. Thank you all for joining us on this April Fool's Day. No jokes here, just some great music to spotlight on the podcast. We're very appreciative that you have joined us for this. And we'll be back regular time, 7 o'clock Eastern Sunday night, with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire, the music of March the 13th, coming up on Sunday night. A big thanks to everyone joining us in the chat tonight. Chris and Brandon, really appreciate you guys stopping by, and always appreciate your insights. Two guys that love hard rock and heavy metal and classic rock as much as we do. A big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of the podcast. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for his hard work on this podcast. And a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you have listened to the Hard Rock Empire. And we will join you again coming up Sunday night for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.